Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. I want to assure you that with the planning of this service, we have all come in wearing our masks. We are disinfecting before and after we do this service. We are being very, very careful and following the rules that have been put in place for being in this building. If you come into this building for any reason, we hope that you will use the same precaution during these times of COVID-19. Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Kathy Crain. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson Board of Trustees, and I'm delighted to welcome you here today as we gather in spirit. Our worship leader today is Elaine Faithful. Elaine and I want to thank those who helped create this service. Petra Bear, who helped with the production skills, and joining us is Christine Prado, who created the hymn slides, and Joseph Hebel for the videotaping. Thank you, Sarah Summers, for the lovely solo performance you are about to hear. And as always, we are very grateful to Corey Dodgens for his piano. If you are visiting with us today, we hope you will find something that stimulates your interest. We invite you to visit our website, uufc.org, to learn more about our faith community. If you have any questions, please email or call the church office. We want to remind you that we have a congregational meeting after the service today. That will begin at noon over the online platform. We encourage our members and friends to read the UUFC Weekly Connection newsletter to stay informed about the many activities planned to help you and your family share time with other folks in the UUFC congregation. I will talk more in the service later on about the many ways you can stay connected to your friends here at UUFC. And now, will you join me in a moment of silence, taking a few deep breaths to release the distractions of the outside world so that we might be fully present in this time of worship together.
Our opening words were written by UU minister and author Reverend Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed.
we prepare to enter a spirit of worship, we encourage you to light a candle or chalice as we light our community chalice, and join us as we recite the affirmation. We gather together in a spirit of love, with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to care for one another.
And so what do we pray for? As always, we pray for the endurance of medical professionals, the scientists who search for the cure, and volunteers who continue to work tirelessly to help the hundreds of thousands of people suffering from the coronavirus. May they remain strong and resilient. We remember those without homes, those who have lost their jobs, and those grieving the loss of loved ones. May they find peace and comfort amid tragedy. And what of our nation as a whole? As fervently as we can, we ask that wisdom, compassion, and courage fill the souls of those in positions of leadership and in Washington and in the cities across America. Dissension always seems to ride the coattails of tragedy. Arguments arise, opinions are sharpened, and it can be difficult to forgive those who bring violence into peaceful appeals for justice. May we, by example, spread forgiveness and understanding to all that we can. Through these times of disturbance, anger, and fear, may we remain strong in our commitment to make the world a better place, to treat each step we take as a holy place. You are not alone. We are a part of a fellowship and a national faith community united in the common cause of peace and justice for all. Amen, and blessed be.
Break not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not that circle, make it wider still, till it includes, embraces all the living. Join then the movement of the love that frees, till people of whatever race or nation will truly be themselves, stand on their feet, see eye to eye with laughter and elation.
Greetings from the UUFC social room, where so many of us have gathered to share cups of coffee together, catching up on each other's lives, reflecting on points from the Sunday service, commiserating about social action, or just having fun. The space is empty now. It's been 4 months since our last game night, the last yoga class, since we welcomed a visitor face-to-face into our community. We will return to these rooms. We will see each other's faces. We will hear each other laugh. The time will come when COVID-19's mandatory precautions pass. Even now, our re-entry team, who are members of UUFC, are planning for how and when we can safely return to our beautiful building. The re-entry team is watching for a 2-week downward trend of our area's COVID-19 cases before making any recommendations for us to consider ways to return. There are those among us who miss each other and miss being together in this room. We are good together. That is one reason why the Weekly Connection is emailed to you every Thursday. The newsletter provides links for socializing through online platforms, activities like Social Hour on Sunday, or Bingo with Karen Sanders on Thursdays. Reverend Terry partnered with Gabe to create a phone tree. Now, all members are contacted every couple of weeks or so to check in, to see how you are doing, what your thoughts are. When your person next reaches out to you, please share your ideas for being together within our boundaries of caution. As a member of the UUFC board, I encourage each of you to go to UUFC's webpage and find a colorful donate button to facilitate your ongoing financial support for our fellowship and for our benevolence of the month, which this month is Safe Harbor. There will be no Zoom social hour today due to the congregational meeting scheduled to follow this service at noon. Following a short congregational business discussion, the board is excited for you to have the opportunity to meet Reverend Christina Barnum Martin. She will introduce herself to those in the Zoom attendance and take questions for as long as time allows. I'm excited that as a part of the UUFC board, I was able to be a part of welcoming her to our business a few weeks ago. Thank you to Meg MacArthur, Holly Ulbrich, and Dave Sanders for their work with the search for this interim minister. Reverend Christina will officially begin her work with us on August 15th. Coretta Scott King said, "The greatness of a community is most measured by the compassionate actions of its members." UUs are people of good heart. Our members are managing to stay in touch during this time of forced isolation. Some are physically distancing while visiting on front porches. Others are distancing while taking hikes or initiating small picnics in the outdoors to be together distantly. Some folks, like UUFC's book club, covenant groups, and a Enneagram study group, have continued Zoom gatherings over coffee or wine. If you've not heard from someone you know, please pick up your phone. Call to check in on a member who comes to mind, just to chat. If more of us reach out to our members and friends, we will increase our connected community. We cannot be together in person, but we can always be there for each other. Sometimes we simply need to be there, not to fix anything or do anything in particular, but just to let us feel that we are cared for and supported. May it be so.
wrote this poem. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Adrienne Rich's literary discourse often focused on the oppression of women and lesbians. I'm not a lesbian. I am, of course, a woman. And like Rich, I am a feminist. So there is no surprise, to me at least, that each time I read her words, they resonate. As I thumbed through the back of our hymnal, I came across her poem again 2 weeks ago. I read the words, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save." And they struck me as never before like a baseball bat. As a woman, I am also a Southern woman. I was raised a Southern white woman of privilege. My mother told me one time that while we may not be as wealthy as some of the ladies in her garden club, I would be raised with manners like their daughters. As I remember being instructed on how to enter a room like a lady and to serve as a gracious hostess, I am, in these days, filled with shame. As a woman, as a human being, and as a creature of God. There is nothing in my occupation of that space that justifiably gave me privilege, then or now. As I sit here before this camera, speaking to the emptiness of this room that is our worship sanctuary, I must confess that I am afraid. Several days ago, I listened to a podcast called On Being, hosted by Krista Tippett. She interviewed Resmaa Menakem, an author and psychologist. He tells of a story about a book he wrote entitled My Grandmother's Hands. He tells the story that as a young boy, he sat on the front porch after a long day's work with his grandmother, and she held his hands. And looking at her hands, he asked the question, "Grandma, why are your hands so much bigger than mine?" And she answered, "It's because I picked cotton." It was in her words that he first came to understand the depth of his heritage as a black boy. As he grew into manhood, her words and the acknowledgement of what it meant to be a black man living in America grew to be a deep source of anger inside him. It motivated him in his studies as a psychologist to explore what it is that can possibly be done to begin a process, a real and legitimate process of saving our country from systemic racism, of saving his people, of saving his family, of saving the future of children, of black children. In writing the book, My Grandmother's Hands, and telling of his family's history, he ended the book with a set of exercises. No, actually, he used the word practices. And he didn't call for black men and women to sit down with white men and women to talk about what must be done about racism. what we could do to correct the wrongs of our country's history. Instead, he chose to write two separate parts. Conversations, black with black, and conversations, white with white. The reason why he chose to do this is he believes that each of us must begin to understand where racism starts inside each of us. He argues that racism is part of our DNA. It has grown inside of each of our hearts and minds and spirits so deeply. It has become so entrenched that it is part of our DNA. It is part of who we identify ourselves, whether or not we recognize it or not. And we must begin to ask ourselves very deep questions, very hard and difficult questions, before we can begin to understand that we are the first step in what can be done to heal our country. As I was reading Adrian Cecile's poem, the question arose for me, what gives me the right to speak of how much has been destroyed? Because I am a part of the destruction. And because I, like so many other people, both black and white, have lost so very much. I have to confess that in this time I am afraid. Not afraid of what's happening in our cities, though the violence and the hatred and the division is a fearful thing. I am afraid because I wonder if I have within me the courage, the ability, the strength to begin asking those hard questions, to become a part of the answers. And yet, it is in this very room that resonates of promises and purposes. It is in this space, like so many just like it across our denomination, all empty now, but whose walls and pulpits and classrooms call on us again to cast our lot with those who, age after age, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. When I originally agreed to do this service several months ago, my thoughts were drawn to the possibility that the pandemic would necessitate the cancellation of many springtime events like Mardi Gras, hence my title, Playing to an Empty Room. There would be no weddings, no proms, no baseball games, and most astonishingly of all, no 2020 Summer Olympics. Over 30 sparkling new athletic venues awaiting treasured moments when the people of the world set aside our differences long enough to celebrate together how extraordinary we are as a human race. COVID-19 in many ways has cost us so very much. Across our planet, this disease has taken from us the lives of mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, the oldest and the youngest, the poorest and the most vulnerable. And because of the callous disregard of some empowered both economically and politically. Many more will continue to die. Last week, I spent some time here alone in the sanctuary thinking about this service. I really did need to collect my thoughts. I am by personality not someone who meditates very easily. Unlike my friends with whom I sit on a regular basis, I cannot empty my mind of thoughts. Nevertheless, I confess lately to feeling helpless and alone. I cannot think of emptying my mind when each time I sit and each breath I take, I am reminded of the three words, I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe. How extraordinary that those three words sit at the heart of the two most important tragedies facing our country at this time. The headlines of having inadequate medical equipment to care for the sick were replaced by these cries, the words, I cannot breathe, of a man being killed in the streets by the police. I sit here in this empty room, but I am not alone. As my sister and brother Unitarian Universalist, I know that I have you in the fight with me. We are not alone. We are together in the fight. Several months ago, our minister, Terry Bailoff, led the charge for our congregation and the gathering of the ministerial leadership of our community to hammer together a pledge that we as a community would fight against injustice. How much more appropriate is it for our minister, Reverend Harry, to read the words of this pledge?
It seems appropriate as I prepare to leave this ministry for my ministry in Lynchburg, Virginia, to share the Clemson area pledge to end racism. Look at your signatures. It's been such a gift to work with you and other faith communities, but this wouldn't have happened if this congregation and the board had not been committed to doing more than just lip service to end racism in our community. So let me read again the pledge that we all signed so that we might recommit to this pledge. The ministers of the other faith communities meet now every week to support each other, and I've been part of that. And numerous times they've said, we're so grateful that we have the Clemson area pledge to end racism as a foundation in this time for us to work together to address systemic racism. So here is what we have pledged ourselves to. I believe that every person has worth as an individual. I believe that every person is entitled to dignity and respect, regardless of race or color. I believe that every thought and every act of racial prejudice is harmful. If it is my thought or act, then it is harmful to me as well as to others. Therefore, from this day forward, I will strive daily to eliminate racial prejudice from my thoughts and actions. I will discourage racial prejudice by others at every opportunity. I will treat all people with dignity and respect. I will commit to working with others to transform the Clemson area into a place that treats people of all races, ethnicities, and cultures with justice, equity, and compassion. And I will strive daily to honor this pledge, knowing that the world will be a better place because of my effort. Each of us has worked with others in our community and in the larger community to commit not only to this pledge, but other acts of caring and compassion, because we trust that the world will be a better place because of our acts, our thoughts, our compassion for other people. And it's been a blessing in my life to be part of this community, for all the things that we've accomplished together. And it's a blessing to know that this is part of the legacy that I leave with you and entrust you to be a community that helps inspire others to join this important work to eliminate racism in our hearts, in our minds, in our faith community, and in the larger world. Blessed be.